Nobody has any questions?
I have one I could ask you, Lawrence.
Uh-huh.
I'm on the iPad, which is where I have the question, so I can't really look at that other page. In Safari, I normally have three tabs across the top, and when I select one of them, it fills the whole screen. I did something that now gives me a sidebar with some kind of little message about three windows or three panels. But like the thing I'm looking at, which happened to be Wordle, is now only filling like 2/3 of the screen. And I have this sidebar and I can't see the other two tabs.
Yeah, up
I
at the
don't know,
top,
I don't know
there's a,
how to get out of it. I've tried all the little buttons at the top and whatever.
well, I don't happen to have my iPad with me right now,
Yeah.
but there's an icon up at the top that if you click on it, it either turns on or turns off the sidebar. So
Oh,
if you
okay. I
turn it
try
off,
to,
it'll go back to the whole screen. But
yeah, that's what I'd like to do. I thought I've tried all those little buttons,
yeah,
but
it's just a small sidebar. I don't I don't remember what it looks like
I
off the
know
top of my
above the
head.
sidebar, normally there's a little icon that looks, well, like a sidebar thingy,
Yeah.
and that'll do it, but it doesn't seem to be doing it for me in this
Um,
particular. I even went into settings and turned off something where about multiple windows, multitasking or something,
yeah,
because I didn't,
the answer is I'm not sure.
yeah, it's kind of hard without seeing it.
Yeah, also I haven't played Wordle since I was at many, many years ago before I retired when I was at NOAA. I
Hmm.
was challenged to Wordle contests by the people in my office, and they stopped playing Wordle because I think I won, oh, like 8 times in a row, and they got tired and just gave
Well,
it up.
yeah, that's the only little online game I do daily.
Well, see, I
But
have a liberal arts education, and they were scientists, and I had a wider range of things that I had read
mm,
than they had.
right,
You know, they didn't ask for things like what do you call bacteria that don't have oxygen, which is anaerobic bacteria, but they didn't ask questions like that, and it won't fit in 5 letters anyway. So
yeah.
um, such
Okay, well, I'll fiddle around with this thing, but see what I can come up with, get rid of it. I don't like to have on an iPad, especially multiple panels taking up what little screen I have.
Well, one of the things we're going to talk about today is that under iOS 26, you can actually have lots and lots of open windows, but they don't overlap. Well, they
Right,
overlap, but you can choose which one's in front.
I
It,
see. And
it's
I've not upgraded anything to 26 yet, so
well, that's what today's topic is.
yeah. Okay, well, thank you. I'm gonna continue cooking dinner
Okay,
and listening.
sounds good.
Okay.
Any other questions from anyone? You're silent. My lip reading is not quite that good. Strangely enough, I can lip read really good at basketball games. I'm very good at figuring out what the coach on the other side is saying, but since it's usually limited to only about 100 or so curse words, it's not that difficult.
Okay.
I'd like to ask if
My question
anybody,
is,
oh, sorry,
who's got the floor here?
you do.
Okay. I've got an iPhone 13
Hmm.
and I upgraded the iOS and it says it's version 18.7.1, so it's not even close to 26. Is the 26 for different types of iPhones?
Yes, the it jumped from instead of going from 18 to 19, it went from 18 to 26. Apple got really tired of people saying that, you know, what operating system you have in your Mac, and people said, "Oh, I've got iOS 18," which is the wrong thing to
Yeah,
say.
a
So
whole bunch.
now everything is 26.
Okay. Well, I did supposedly an upgrade, but all I have is 18.
Yeah, it just means that what you had was even older than 18. The 26 is limited to like from, I have a screen that I'm going to show you later that tells you what it is, but it's limited to the last few models. The 26 because of the 26 iOS 26 is a radical departure, and um, it's there's just no way that that iPhone 13 can handle it. Keep in mind that that iPhone 13 is 7 years old, 8 years old. It's it's on the elderly side.
Oh, okay. I haven't had it that long. The buggers, they must have sold me an old phone then.
Well, if you
Yeah.
go into the stores, the Verizon store is more than willing to sell you a phone that's not manufactured anymore, and they'll sell it to you at a discount.
Hmm.
It'll still be brand new in the box. It's just
Oh,
that
yeah, yeah.
it could
It's an
be
old model.
several years old.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's what I got. So now, in terms of it being up to date with current security uh,
The
features,
only
is that?
No, the iOS 26 has a lot of security updates that they did not make retroactive. The only part that's made retroactive in some respects is Safari. The Safari was updated to the current Safari in iOS 18. But even then, it can't. Well, it's a features that it doesn't have in terms of the security. It's a security update, but some of the features it doesn't have, like it doesn't know how to do Apple Intelligence on an iPhone 13 and things like that. But in
Okay.
terms of the security, it was updated for that.
Oh, okay. Well, that's mainly what I'm concerned about. All the bells and whistles.
What? No, no, security for Safari, not
Oh, okay.
security for anything else.
Oh,
Security for Safari.
okay. So what sort of a phone do I need to get that's actually up to up to
The ones that I think were supported by the update are iPhones 15, 16, 17. I don't remember. What do I
oh,
have? Mine's brand new.
I
So
could probably go online and find out. Yeah.
yeah. And also I have a slide. I just don't happen to remember what it says.
Yeah.
There are a
Okay.
lot of slides today. So a lot of stuff to cover. Um, what was your question, sir?
I wondered if anybody had tried to use any type of a windsock on an iPhone to deaden wind noise.
I talked to my brother about this because he does podcasts, but as it turns out, he does podcasts inside, so it's not really relevant. But most of the people that I've talked to, they say that you just have to use an external microphone that can have one of those. He says the technical term for them is a dead cat, but anyway, it's that little foam that goes over the microphone. Um, and I haven't found anyone who is doing the same thing you're doing, where they're hiking and recording what's going on at the same time. I haven't found anyone who does that. Um,
Well, I found on Amazon a one that's got an elastic opening so you can slip it over the end of the iPhone where the microphones are. It's a little inconvenient simply because that's also where the start and stop button is for the video.
well, also, if it's fabric and if it rubs up against the iPhone, I think it'll create its own noise since it's actually touching to the surface of the iPhone. Um, I don't know. Um, I talked to some people who do podcast aboard ships where they're out at sea and they're outside and lots of wind. And they do the technique I mentioned, if they do voiceovers after the fact.
Oh,
They, well, there's if you're standing on a ship's deck, somebody can be 2 feet away from you and you can't hear them. So you might think it's cheating, but it's really the only option.
mhm. What about, I posted this on in the discussion boards. I wondered if anybody had found a gimbal that will work with iPhone 16. You know, when they moved, they got I forget what they moved the button placement so that the mild cheap gimbal had too wide a clamp to fit such that the iPhone was centered. It had to be off center. And that imbalance did in the motor on my $30 gimbal.
Uh, I've never used a gimbal, which doesn't really answer your question, but um, I don't know. Uh, I don't
I
know
asked
anyone. I don't know anyone
Perplexity.
who currently uses a gimbal. One person I didn't know who used a gimbal. They used to use a gimbal so they could do um, video of them going on their bike, and they
Right.
had the gimbal mounted to the handlebar. But since then, they've used the same people who make the Steadicam have a small rack that's designed for an iPhone, and they use that instead. But it costs more than an iPhone, so it's
Uh,
probably not what you really had in mind. Um,
Not really. When I asked Perplexity AI about that, it suggested a couple of different brands, which I looked at, but they were like $300 or more
yeah.
than I want to spend.
Well, he does um, mostly distance biking, but he also does um, motocross and so on and so forth. And for the motocross, he just bolts it to the handlebars, and as you're flipping, there's so much motion anyway, it's not trying to make it balanced out, so he doesn't care. Uh,
Yeah. Mm.
I was curious how they did this one Apple video where the this bike is going along a trail and it's looking off to the side, and as he's going down this trail with his bike, it's very nice and steady, but it's just using the Steadicam feature inside of the phone itself, which makes it look steady. But what it does is it shrinks the window, because as you're bouncing around, it just figures out what the average is and moves the window into that average.
Hmm.
Uh, and that's how they did it, and that's why he did it. He wanted to show off that feature, but I that's probably not what you had in mind. Any other questions that I don't have the answers to?
Oh, I have a question. Um, I'm curious about the iOS we're talking about. I just opened my phone and I have iOS version 18.6.2, and I didn't upgrade. And is there an easy way to do that?
Yes, if you go into the well, first of all, I recommend everybody turn on automatic updates. The biggest cause of people's computers getting hacked is that a lot of people, particularly young people, decide that they don't want to be interrupted by an update, so they turn off automatic updates. And this one woman who lives in town, she told me that she was almost up to date, but she had turned off automatic updates when she was in the middle of the project, so she was a couple months out of date. And she was in the process of upgrading her machine. So we went and looked, and the last update was actually 4 years earlier. So she was way, way out of date. And the reason why this was a problem is that her computer crashed. And so she didn't lose a couple months of work. She lost 4 years of work. And the crash was so bad, we couldn't recover anything off of her machine. So I encourage everybody to turn off automatic updates. You can turn it on your phone, your iPad, your Mac, just turn it on. But if you haven't turned it on, if you go into settings, um, I don't know,
General.
settings, general, and then it's got update, and you click on that, and it'll go out and tell you what the latest update is. If you are doing an update and an upgrade, there's a separate little button you have to push at the top that says, "Do you want to upgrade to macOS 26?" Um, it gives you the choice of not doing that particular update, uh, but it's just settings, general, software update, and click on it. Um, but I encourage everyone to turn on automatic updates. It saves.
Yeah.
Just too many people I know say they turned it off temporarily and then they forgot for 4 years and are way behind. I had a guy who said that he had Time Machine turned on his machine. It did these updates every hour like it's supposed to. No, he'd never turned it on ever. There were no updates. So, two things to do to have a parachute is make sure you have automatic updates and make sure Time Machine's running.
I have a comment about that. I have automatic updates set on everything, and it never does it automatically. I always have to ask it to do it.
I
When I
will
hear,
tell you that it depends a lot on your internet service, and the internet service around here is terrible. Um,
Yeah.
but I still recommend that you turn it on anyway.
Yeah.
yeah, I have it on all of them, but I always have to go in and manually tell it to
Yeah.
update now.
I never had this problem when I was living in Maryland, but I had gigabit Ethernet at home, up and down, and that doesn't exist on the Olympic Peninsula. Maybe the
Mhm.
coasties have it, but I don't think anybody else does.
Yeah, one other quick question while I'm on the air here. So I have an iPhone 12 mini. You're
Yes,
telling me that's like really out of date security
yes.
wise, and I should upgrade?
Security wise and technology wise, it's way, way out of date.
Wow,
Yes.
okay. Still works fine, but
Yeah, the minis are no longer made, so the Apple doesn't make
yeah,
one that size. They thought that it would be that they did some market research and women said, "Oh, we would like a small phone."
right.
The largest users of their large phones are women.
Yeah.
More women have the large phones than men.
I can still
So,
read I can still read stuff on it, surprisingly.
well, I
But
have I have it because I have the large phone because I also use it as my portable book reader. It's
mm,
about the size
yeah,
and weight of a paperback book. So I have the Max because it does that. And the other nice thing about the Max phones is that it has the longest battery life, which is not really
oh,
a huge problem for me, but
yeah,
it's because there's more room, bigger battery.
right. Yeah, I rarely use my phone, so the battery's no issue. So if I order a new updated phone from Apple, will I be able to just transfer everything over real simply like I could with this one, where you just put them kind of side by side and plug them in and go through
Yes.
a few steps?
Yes.
Okay.
What makes it a lot faster though is if you back up your phone completely to
Mm-hmm.
iCloud first, because
Okay.
it's much easier for your phone to download everything from iCloud than it is over your home network sometimes. Because
Okay.
if it's backing up from iCloud, you can just go to bed, leave it plugged in, and it'll do its thing while you're sleeping.
Right. I think it does that automatically, but you would want to do one like right before you switch, correct?
Well, a lot of people, when they have the bare minimum iCloud account, which means
Mhm.
that there's not enough room for photos. And if you have some photos, if you have just a few hundred photos, that can overwhelm the amount of space that you have on iCloud. So it depends upon what you've done with it. If you use it as just for as a phone and you're not using it for anything else, yeah, the 5 gigs that you get from Apple is probably fine, but pretty much everybody
Yeah,
has something else. And
yeah.
um, there people have their income tax on it and their
Oh,
dental records and
no, I don't have any
everything.
of that stuff.
Well, I'm just saying a lot of people
Yeah.
have staggering amounts of stuff. My phone has 200 gigs worth of stuff on it.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that. I'll get right on
Okay.
it.
Chris, you have a question?
Yeah, I have not updated from uh, iOS 18.7 on my iPhone 14.
You may
Um,
not be able to on the iPhone 14. I think that,
say, oh, my understanding is 14 is good.
well, I'll have to, again, I forgot what my sign, my slide, I have a slide that says what can be updated. Um, and but I know that a lot of the stuff that iOS 26 requires a fair amount of horsepower. I suppose I could just look it up rather than wait for my slides to show up. And it says, okay, actually, it does say it'll to go with the 11 and 12 mini. But a lot of the stuff that it'll do, it just can't do anything with those machines.
Well,
I
my real question is I haven't connected my iPhone 14 to my Wi-Fi. I've been using a 4-bar cell connection on my front porch. So I'm curious if anyone has already tried to uh, update to iOS 26 on a cell connection.
it would use up a staggering amount of data because it's like 2.8 gigabytes or something like that. It's a lot of, it might even be larger than that, but it's a lot of bandwidth. So it would probably wreck your data plan. I strongly recommend anybody who's got Wi-Fi at home to turn on Wi-Fi on their phone because that way, if you're doing something that's just data, like you're doing sending text message, you're doing anything other than a phone call, it'll go over your Wi-Fi and go over your home internet rather than over the cell and use up part of your data plan. So it doesn't hurt anything, and it's actually in some cases it could be faster. In my case, if I don't turn on Wi-Fi, sometimes I can't get a phone call at home. I have 0 bars at home, maybe one if I'm lucky. Um, but that has to do with where I live. So I encourage everybody to turn on Wi-Fi on their phone because it's quite often faster and it doesn't use any of your data plan. The only time you use your data plan is when you're away from home and you want to do something, and at that point, it will use the data plan.
Well, I have unlimited.
Yes, but unlimited over a cell phone is you have to read the fine print. Unlimited over your cell plan quite often means that after you use a certain amount, they slow you way down.
Uh,
Because if they slow you way down, then they're not really in any danger of you using up too much.
mm.
And on the peninsula, the cell signals are usually quite poor anyway. I can get downtown Squim, I can get 5 bars. If I download something and then I download that same something in Silverdale, still with 5 bars, it'll be 15 times faster in Silverdale. So just because it says you've got bars here, that means you got a strong signal, but it doesn't mean you do have the bandwidth.
Got it. Thank you.
I have something to say about that. I am out near the water, and so frequently my phone goes through Canada, and I get poor reception. I get cut off, what have you. Anyway, my neighbor's son said, "Oh, you should put it through Wi-Fi," and I did that, and a world of difference. Much better reception, and so anyway, I highly recommend that to anybody.
Yeah, I don't live quite that close, but I will be out riding in the neighborhood of my bike and look at my phone. It says that my international calling plan is active, and I'm thinking, I haven't left the country. I don't want my international calling plan to be active. So yeah, um, there are definite benefits to Wi-Fi. I will tell you that there are around here some exceptions to that. There are several restaurants and other establishments that say that they have Wi-Fi that you can use. And I'll try to do something and I get very frustrated and I turn off their Wi-Fi that they have in their store and it's much faster over cell. But that's dependent upon whatever they have for Wi-Fi. A lot of stores really don't invest too much in that. And I think if you go into Costco, you might be better off just using a satellite phone in Costco because pretty much every place in Costco is dead. Doesn't make any difference what plan. I think the only people who have good cell coverage in Costco are the people who are selling cell phones. I don't think anybody else does. Costco's a great desert.
Hmm.
Yes, Chris.
Are you going to put the sign-in link into the chat box?
I'm going to do that when I go to the presentation in a couple of minutes.
Okay.
But if I don't, remind me. Speaking of which, our president and treasurer are at their homeowners meeting tonight, so they're not going to be joining us. Any other questions?
I've read that Apple is discontinuing its Clips video program. I wonder if you've heard anything about any upgrades to iMovie.
I know that they had they came up with a version of Final Cut Pro for the um, iPad, which kind of took me by surprise. But iMovie, nah, I haven't read anything in particular, and I never used the video clips. Um, I never used it, so I don't really know anything about it. I haven't heard that rumor. Uh, Again, because it's something I never used, it's not something I really paid attention to. But the iPad, not the yeah, the iPad version of Final Cut um, is being almost instantly was latched onto by a lot of people who have portable production needs because they can have multi-camera support and all kinds of stuff right there on an iPad. My brother asked me about it, expecting me to know, and I didn't know that because I haven't used Final Cut in several years. I used to use it at work because we did all kinds of fancy stuff. And even though I was not the video editor, sometimes I'd ask for something, they say it wasn't possible, and so I go and do it just to show them it was. Um, quite often they told me it wasn't possible because they didn't want to do it, but details. Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to start the meeting proper. And as I mentioned earlier, I am recording this and I thought I had closed captioning on, but I don't see any closed captioning. Anybody see closed captioning?
Uh,
Uh, okay,
um,
it says
on the Zoom screen, more
yes,
is at the bottom,
yes.
right?
Apparently I had clicked something, but it was the wrong thing. So
And well,
Working, working on
caption,
mine.
yeah,
captions is an option, it says. It's
yeah, well,
on the list.
yeah. Zoom has changed their interface again. It took me a long time just to find out how to turn on the meeting. It used to be that I'd have this recurring meetings things, and now I have to go find a calendar and click on the right date and click on the right button. And I think they're trying to drive me crazy. Um,
Your closed captions are working on my iPad.
okay. But anyway, we're recording this and have closed captioning on. Tonight's topic is
Link,
macOS, pardon?
l- link, link, link in chat.
I haven't done that yet,
Okay.
but I shall. I'm going to paste the sign up link into the chat window. And it's in the chat window now. Uh, does anyone have any experience with Boost Mobile for cell service? That's a good question. I was a little bit surprised at a presentation I was listening to. It was a computer security presentation. An Apple engineer has a phone with two SIMs, and he was using Mint Mobile, and he was very pleased with it. But he said he was out in the middle of the boonies, but he's out in the middle of the boonies in Indiana. I don't know how many of you ever looked at a map of Indiana. Indiana has a town every 10 miles, whether they need one or not. There's no place in the entire state that you're more than 10 miles from a town. So his definition of out in the boonies, I don't think is really equivalent to ours, but he was quite pleased with Mint Mobile, um, which is, among other things, a Canadian company. I'm going to be talking today about macOS 26, iOS 26, iPadOS 26, and I'm really not going to say anything about watchOS 26 other than to say that the new watch, one of the things that has on it that's nice is it has a larger battery. Um, so it will probably last you all day and all night. I tend to recharge mine when I'm taking a shower in the morning. So I never really had problems, but I know several people who um, have had issues. But there was a new version of the Apple Watch Ultra and the Watch 11. Um, and it has some health features. They even have some health features now in the new AirPods, but I don't remember what it was. So I'm not going to talk about that. Um, but I am going to talk about the operating systems. And in order to do that, I'm going to show slides. And in order to show the slides, I need to show you my desktop. So I first will come up with my slides and then I will display them. Um, okay. I think I'm going to have to end up collapsing my screen because uh, share. And it'll look less confusing in a second, I hope. Maybe not. Okay. I'm not sure what it is showing now, but I'll hope for the best. First thing I'm going to start off with is something of a joke. This is a short video clip about two-factor authentication. People have asked me to explain two-factor authentication, and I've tried to explain it, and people have had trouble understanding it. So here's a visual of what two-factor authentication is. And that is two-factor authentication. Basically, if they try and get in one way, they'll be thwarted when they go to the next step. The new version of macOS 26 and iPadOS 26 and so on, they're all called 26 because people got confused as to what operating system they had, and they kept on saying that they had something belonged to some other device, and it was driving Apple support engineers crazy. So they all are now called 26, even the HomePod operating system, which has no way of displaying it, but the HomePod um, is HomePod 26.
Lawrence,
Yeah,
can I interrupt just for a second?
yeah.
I want to tell you that was awesome. That was that was a good representation of two-factor, whatever it is.
Well,
Good.
it was shown at a security conference, and there were several hundred people on the security conference call, and we had to kind of suspend things for several minutes because everybody was laughing.
Yeah, good. Okay, carry on.
A lot of the work from, well, yeah, there's a little commercial here, but there's a lot of the work on iOS 26 came and iPad and everything came from their research they did when they were developing the Vision Pro, which are the goggles that Apple has. In the process of trying to figure out how you can use an interface that doesn't have a keyboard and you can't touch and so on and so forth. They made some interesting findings, and a lot of what's in macOS 26 comes from that. And they call it liquid glass because that's the idea behind the Apple Vision Pro. Before you upgrade, things you should do. There are things you can do, guides that you can look to tell you how these things are supposed to operate. Apple also has some guides to macOS 26. If you go into Apple's site and you type in, there's a little search box up in the right corner. If you type in macOS 26 guide, it'll take you to a page that has a guide to it. There is a Tips app that's available on the Mac, the iPad, and the iPhone. Used to be originally, I think it was just for the iPhone, and now all three of them have it. The Tips app, it has an extensive collection of how to do things on whatever device they're talking about. They're the take control books. Mac Most is a website. So if you just type in Mac Most, it's a website that's just full of video tutorials. So it's got a nice index. You type in what it is you're looking for, and this guy will explain how to do that. Really quite nicely done. And then, of course, you can also use your local neighborhood users group. You should also check to make sure that you're compatible. For example, macOS Tahoe is available on all of these things. My dearly beloved iMac Pro is not on this list. I can't upgrade it. But when I think about it, my iMac Pro I bought in 2017, which was a few years ago. Um, but you should see if your device is supported. You should see if you have any specialized peripherals, if they're supported. If you have just, run-of-the-mill uh, printer and things like that, probably not an issue. But I know somebody who has a 3D printer for printing out whatever it is. Before you upgrade your machine, if you're planning on using that 3D printer, you probably want to check to see if there's a driver for it. Somebody else I know has I can't remember the acronym. It's a computer guided saw, and use it for making basically tools. And I think it might be a while before that gets upgraded. And you should also check if for any critical third-party apps. I know artists who put off for a month upgrading because this one app that she used from Adobe, most of them worked, but one app it took a while, so she put off for a bit. You should also make sure that you have a full backup. You should know the difference between a backup and an archive. A backup is a backup of your machine the way it is. An archive is all that stuff that you want to keep that you don't want to keep on your machine, and you store it in a safe deposit box. Having an archive that's 5 years old is not the same as having a backup that you did yesterday. And the other thing to think about is what you do for a disaster recovery plan. And here I want to talk about something that people have brought up to me several times, which is my current machine, which is a 2013 iMac, still runs. So why should I upgrade? And I'll tell you the simple answer to that is if your 2013 machine dies, you can't upgrade it anymore because everything on it is gone. It's much easier to upgrade when you have two working machines. If one of them's dead, well, you can buy a new machine, but that's not the same as doing an upgrade. So don't wait until your current device dies before thinking about doing an upgrade. And the step number one in the disaster recovery plan is if your current machine dies and you're basically just out of luck. Benefits of upgrading, you get interface enhancements, you get productivity things that you couldn't do before, and accessibility improvements. You have patches for all known exports and security holes. You reduce the risk of data exfiltration. What I always talk about is privacy and identity stuff. If you have a current machine, it's much harder for the people to get that stuff. And you have a better starting point for things that nobody's discovered yet in terms of threats. And you have bug fixes, so fix bad code and things slow things down and make things inefficient. Those are all benefits. You have performance increases in terms of batteries. Quite often, the new operating systems are optimized to take better use of batteries and better use of the screen and the chips that support that, updated drivers, compatibility. After you upgrade, Do note that it'll probably be a couple days where your machine will seem to be a little bit less efficient. And that's because your machine is busy downloading new versions of apps and patches and so on and so forth. And also, it indexes from the scratch all of your mail, completely reindexes all of your mail, reindexes all of your photos, all of that. And all of that takes a time and it slows things down. As I mentioned, the new operating systems are all based upon liquid glass that they got from the Vision Pro research. And they call it liquid glass because the things just kind of flow. And my phone is reminding me that I haven't taken evening pills yet. And I don't turn off the reminder because I'm afraid at the end of the meeting I'll forget. Just to show you kind of some differences, if you don't like the new liquid glass, you can't get rid of it, but you can go through and change some settings to reduce, it has reduced, you can reduce the transparency. Right now, you're kind of seeing through the interface. You can turn that off if you don't like. You can increase the contrast if you don't like it. You can do this on both the iPhone, the iPad, and on the Mac. But I would suggest that if you upgrade, just give it a chance because after a day or two, you'll forget that it's there.
Lawrence, either it's just me or everybody, but I think we lost you.
Oh, you
Yes,
did?
we did. Yeah. Now we can hear you.
We can
Or-
see your video, but most of us can't hear your audio.
Sorry about that. I don't know why.
You're back.
Oh, now we can hear you.
Now you're back.
I didn't do anything. Another thing that they've done is they expanded Apple Intelligence. A couple things about Apple Intelligence. This has received a lot of negative publicity because they say that Apple Intelligence is not as good as ChatGPT or Gemini or other people's intelligence. There's a reason for that. Apple does not give your data to Apple. If you ask a question on Apple Intelligence, it doesn't send that data to Apple. If you ask anything on ChatGPT, ChatGPT keeps that information. If you ask anything on Gemini, Google keeps that information. If you ask anything on Copilot, Microsoft keeps that data. And that's because they use it for training their intelligence engines. Apple does not. If you sit there and you have something in Pages and you want to summarize the text, which is one of the things that Apple Intelligence can do, you can sit there and you say, summarize this, and it'll give you a summary. All of that is done on your machine. It doesn't go to Apple. There are a couple fairly famous problems that it's run into where people were summarizing top secret information and they inadvertently exposed it to ChatGPT or to Microsoft or to Google. And Apple does not do that. They've been criticized for that, but I'm with Apple on this. I don't really want Apple to have copies of my um, letters that I'm writing to people, and um, I'm right now in the process of rewriting some stuff for my homeowners association. Apple doesn't need to keep that. I have no intention of giving it to them. You can optionally turn on ChatGPT so that it works with Apple Intelligence. And if you want to, you can do that. I don't recommend that you do that, though, simply because you just don't know what ChatGPT is going to do with that information. It's a real problem with privacy and security, and I just I don't want to go there. But things that it can offer now can do live translations. So if you're using messages or FaceTime or even your phone, you can communicate across languages in real time. I haven't tried this because I don't have an opportunity. And where I have tried it though is that I've told it to translate things in Safari, and it'll do translations in Safari. It's been able to do that for some time, but it's definitely getting much slicker about this sort of the stuff. But they've done a demonstration of somebody talking in Italian. They were visiting in Italy, and they were talking. Somebody was talking in Italian. This person was speaking in English, and they could hold a phone between the two of them, and the American could read it in English, and the Italian could read it in Italian. It's a neat trick. Not something I've been able to play with. Here's an example that they showed where as they're talking back and forth, either on the phone or in messages, it'll do a translation on the fly. You now have access to Apple Intelligence and shortcuts, so you can create a shortcut to summarize particular types of information that you routinely get. And you can use it to create images and um, basically use one piece of information to modify something else, including images and text. And they're very fond of the fact that Image Playground now has access to um, um, Apple Intelligence. But again, you don't have to use ChatGPT. Just because ChatGPT is an option, you can use it without using ChatGPT. They have a nice watercolor filter now in Apple's imaging program that's really quite nice. I've done several with my granddaughter. Genmojis are you basically they have memojis. Memojis are basically these characters that you can have speak. Well, you can now make your own, and you can now take two different Genmojis and mix them together. They're using the example of a sloth and a light bulb, and so you create a Genmoji of a sloth with a light bulb. Um, you have access to visual intelligence, which is you're looking at something and you want to know something about it. It'll try and tell you what that thing is. Visual intelligence is, I will tell you that it doesn't work at the shore of the Straits of Juan de Fuca as well as it does in town. And that's because if it really doesn't know what it is, it doesn't have the opportunity to ask about it because you don't have any connectivity. It they also have controls on turning off visual intelligence. I was using visual intelligence earlier today. I took a picture of it was down at a bank downtown. Took a picture out the window. I was talking to this clerk, and she was facing away from a window. And there's this pretty bird, and I took a picture of the bird, and she said, "Oh, that's a something or other woodpecker." And I looked it up, and my phone said it was a red-breasted sapsucker. And she thought about it, and she says, "Oh, okay." So I wasn't trying to disagree with her. It's just my phone told me what it was. But you can turn that off if you want. When it comes to macOS, most of this presentation is going to be on macOS, but a lot of these features are common to all of the pieces. Um, it works with anything with Apple Silicon. It'll work with Intel-based Macs if they're on this short list here, which only goes back to, at the oldest, is 2019. Um, there's exceptions about the Intel in a second that we'll get to. Um, Something about what's happening in the future. macOS 26 drops support for FireWire. FireWire is a high-speed way to connect devices, and Apple hasn't. Nobody's produced any FireWire utilities peripherals in about a decade. So they've dropped support for that. Next year, they're going to drop support for all Intel-based machines. So if you have an Intel-based machine now, even if it's supported next year, it won't be. And in 2028, they're going to drop support for Rosetta. Rosetta is a way to run old code on Intel, some types of Intel code on Apple Silicon machines, and they're going to drop that by late 2027. And if you have an Intel machine, it doesn't come with Apple Intelligence, and you can't run iOS and iPad apps on it, and can't support Metal. Metal is a visualization system that draws the desktop and so on and so forth. It uses an older version. Spatial audio. Spatial audio is that the phone on the new iPhone has spatial audio, so it's actually has two different microphones, and they can record separate channels so that something on the right side will sound louder on the right side than it will on the left. And when you play it out through a TV screen, it sounds like you have kind of a more of a concert hall. But that's not available on Intel machines, and a lot of other little pieces just don't work on the um, Intel machines. You don't get live transcriptions. There are certain things that the old iPads don't quite work as well with. You inserting emojis using voice dictation doesn't work. Game mode doesn't work on Intel. A bunch of things that probably most of you don't use, but um, you'll still have to say, "Hey Siri" in order to use Siri, things like that. And
Web results. I
yeah,
changed them if you ask again from your iPhone.
my machines are talking to me. Um, Windows 10 Boot Camp doesn't work, but that's okay because Windows 10 doesn't work anyway. But it also doesn't support Windows 11 because the TPM, which is trusted by government processor module, something. It's a security chip in Windows. Um, it doesn't recognize that if you're on an Intel machine, and Linux can't use the T2 chip, the chip that's in the Intel machines, and some of the screen redrawing stuff doesn't work as well. Um, and down at the bottom where it says sell, recycle, donate, Mac Recycle Clinic won't do you much good here because Mac Recycle Clinic is located in the DC area. So if you want to sell, recycle, or donate your machine, probably don't want to use them. One thing that I do like, and if you were never running a newspaper or a magazine, you don't care. In Sequoia and in previous versions, a lot of the text was centered. And that's really hard because it's much easier to read left align text in English than it is centered. Because in centered text, your eye has to go to different it has to go different lengths in order to get back to the start of a line. And so your eye has to do more work. You will notice that newspapers still use justified type, where all the columns are, it's an even line on the left and right. But you'll notice that most magazines have given that up, and that's because your eye has to travel just as far, regardless of how many letters are in the sentence. And it's easier to have a ragged right margin. It's easier on your eye, it's less work. And Apple has finally saw the light of day, and they're no longer centering the text, and they got rid of justified text quite some time ago. Um, Here you see an example in a alert dialog where you see the entire alert dialog on the left and on Sequoia is centered, and on the right it's all left justified. And again, that might seem subtle, but it's actually makes it easier for you to read it, and it's less tiring. You can turn off the transparency. The way at the top, the example is how things appear in um, iOS 26, macOS 26. The menu bar, there's no backlighting to it, so the content can go up to the top of the screen. Just the parts of the menu that you need to see as menu are covered up. You can have limited transparency or you can just completely blot it out. And you have that choice on the Mac, the iPad, and the iOS. But I, again, encourage you to try it with just the way it ships before making changes. Um, this shows you how to make some changes. There used to be something, there was a thing called control panel in settings. That doesn't exist anymore. Now it's all in menu bar. Menu bar was there already, but the things that used to be in the control panel are now in the menu bar. And that's because in getting rid of all that stuff off the top, they also wanted to get rid of the controls for it. So you can control that from here. They changed the icon for the disk drives. It's no longer a hard drive because Apple doesn't actually have spinning hard drives anymore. They have solid state ones, so they have a graphic of a solid state disk drive, which is trivial, but at least they're consistent. And they have a difference between an empty and a empty folder and a folder with contents. In the past, you really couldn't tell what the difference was, but now you can. So if I put something in this folder, I clicked too soon. If I click on this, it'll show you something adding it to the folder, and now it shows that it's got contents. They changed the icons. In the past, the icon designers got really cutesy and they'd go outside of the frame that was reserved for the icon. And you'll see down below that some of them stick out, have it sticking out. And the new icons, everything's within that space. And so they've changed all of the icons and added more transparency to things. For things that are third-party apps that Apple can't update, the developers have to do, they put it what they call icon jail. They've taken their old icon and now it's in a rounded corner jail until they update their iphones. Spotlight, this is not really a demo of Spotlight, it's more of a telling you what's going to happen. If you press the command key in the space bar, you'll get a Spotlight search will pop up, or you can click on an icon. And when you do that, it'll actually try and give you suggestions on what you want to do. You want to send something to something. Here we're asking messages to send something to somebody. So send, you can tell it that let's meet at the studio to whatever the recipients are. So they're kind of reducing the gap between Spotlight finding things for you and using Spotlight to start telling the Mac to do things. So that's an example of what you can do. And you can also script it with shortcuts. So you can now tell it to do this, then do this, then do this. Several things as part of a script, kind of plug and play. The launcher that used to be in Sequoia and past ones doesn't exist anymore. Instead, there's an apps icon in the menu bar, but you can also create a launcher if you really want one. What you do is you just go to your applications in your sidebar, say take the applications folder and add it to the dock. And if you do that, then you create this thing that you see on the right side of the screen there, which is just you click on that and it pops up with the applications folder shown in alphabetical order. So if you really want the launcher, you can do that. The way in which they display things is different in the control panels. In Spotlight, you used to just have these check boxes that it covers applications, calculator, whatever. And now it gives you a great deal more granularity. You can turn it on specifically for specific applications as to what you want Spotlight to use or not use. And it gives you just a great deal more granularity. Um, Safari has a lot of changes, and the bug fixes go back to Sonoma and Sequoia, but the liquid glass interface does not go back to those because wrong operating system. Um, you can now set two-factor autofill in all browsers, not just Safari, but I went to put a little asterisk. It will work with all browsers that have updated to Apple standards. So if you have an old version of Firefox or something that hasn't used Apple's toolkit, it can't do this trick. It's those other browsers have to incorporate the code to do that. The sidebar has been redesigned. It has picture-in-pictures updates, which I never use, so I don't know about that. You can now do skip forward and back from the keyboard. Um, Something that I'm going to explain more with the next slide. Advanced tracking and fingerprinting protection. When you use your browser regularly to look up the menu for Oak Table downtown, and when you use it for shopping in Amazon, and you look to see if Home Depot has the filters for your HVAC system, all of that, you use Safari for doing all of that stuff, and you don't worry too much about privacy. Google, which most of your searches are probably done on Google, or Bing if they're not done on Google, takes all of those searches, and even if they say that they've anonymized it, they come up with a fingerprint of who you are. They can guess how old you are, they can guess your gender, they can guess whether you have children or grandchildren, they can guess whether or not you ride a bike, all from your browser history. So Apple came up with this thing called Advanced Tracking and Fingerprinting Protection, where it anonymizes that stuff. So when you send those requests off to Google, Google doesn't know, can't link it to you. Not only does it not know you specifically, but it sends it out in such a way that it can't even link it to your machine because it makes it look like it came from any number of other machines. So basically, it screws up Google and Bing's and everybody else's way of tracking you. And the also does things like it blocks cross-site tracking tools and all kinds of other stuff. You can, if you want to, by note, it's already turned on, but you can turn it off if you don't want to. And why you'd want to do that, I don't know. But now it's by default, it's on. So it just makes it much harder for people to spy on you. I think I mentioned this before. I had read, I had been reading this article about the F-35 fighter several years ago. And when I went to into um, launch my browser the next time I was looking at the Washington Post had on the front page an advertisement for the F-35 fighter. And I really wasn't in the market for $150 million jet fighter, but Google had told them that I'd been looking about the F-35, and so now it was trying to sell it to me. And this ATPF will prevent things like that from happening. And if you really want to, you can turn it on. Why you would want to, I don't know. I have lost my mousey. Control Center is gone. It's now incorporated into the menu bar setting, but it's still available. It's still there. There's you can click on and it'll drop down a list of things that you can control. Um, and there are some things about it that are a little bit different. One is that it's like I said, it's the control center On the left here, it shows what's under Sequoia. Under right, it's under menu bar. But things that you can turn on and off are all there in the new controls. You don't have to go sit there and look for them and wonder whether or not where they're located and how they work. It's spelled out much better than it used to be. You can now get live activities on the Mac. In the past, this was available on the iPhone, but it wasn't available on the Mac. And what it'll do is it'll pop up something in at the top of your screen. So if you have, if you used a Eats app to, I don't know that User Eats works here, but if you did order something from User Eats and they are sending you a message that they're heading your way, it'll actually pop up on your Mac and tell you that it's on the way. And it's part of the integration between the Mac and the phone. Some other parts, I'll get to that later, but so you can get live activities. If you have a laptop, you'll get a battery warning right on the screen when it hits 10%, telling you that you need to plug it in. The volume and display controls, instead of trying to figure out how to reach them, they're up in the menu bar and you click on it and it gives you the menu right down below it. You don't have to go look for where the controls are. You can add emojis and symbols to your folders, and you can also color the folder. In the past, you could have any color you wanted of a folder as long as it was the same color as it always is. Now you can change the color. You can put icons on it. You can put emojis on it. Um, I I think this is a good idea, although I don't know that I wouldn't have gone quite as far as Apple did. You can also personalize your app colors and their backgrounds and the mode in which they're shown. You can personalize the clock on the lock screen in terms if you want to show a clock, you can change the font on it and as well as the background design and a bunch of other things. Passwords. Passwords first came out, I think, on the iPhone, but now it's available on the iPhone, the iPad, and the Mac. And they've added some functions to it so you can see when you last changed a password. It'll keep track of previous versions so that you know not to repeat something you've already used. Um, it will also give you all kinds of warnings about data breaches and so on and so forth. And something about the data breach, somebody asked me about this. If there's a data breach, Apple does not go out there and check your passwords to find out if they're in the data breach. Apple subscribes to a service that says that Verizon had a data breach. Apple will then look and see, Apple tells your Mac there was a Verizon data breach. Your Mac looks and sees if you have a Verizon password. And if it falls within the date range of that data breach, your Mac will then say, hey, your password was in a data breach. So at no point does Apple actually know if you have a Verizon account. Apple just sent that information to your Mac. Your Mac then figured it out and figured out that there was a data breach and your password was exposed. It didn't go out there and look for it. It's not spying on you, but it's really quite nicely done. And I was surprised at how many of my passwords over the years have been involved in big data breaches. Lots and lots and lots. You can import and export between password managers. So if you're using 1Password, you can actually export all that stuff and suck it into Apple passwords. And unlike what 1Password does, Apple encrypts that transfer file. 1Password, when they send it out, it's a plain text file, which is not all that great. Shortcuts now covers files and folders, battery levels, external displays, writing tools, image playgrounds, all kinds of stuff. I don't know how many of you use shortcuts, but shortcuts is basically a type of programming, but it's a fairly easy type of programming. I have a shortcut that I use for resizing images that I'm sending via email because my phone takes these huge photographs And a lot of people, if I send a photograph to their phone, they're only going to look at it on the phone. So why do they need a photograph that's 100 times larger? Notes can be used to capture conversations on the phone using the audio recordings app to create transcriptions. And it now supports import and export. In the past, if you wrote it in the notes, the only way to get it out of there was copy paste. But now you can export it, which is nice. And by the way, I was recently on a seminar where I did not know about this capability at the time. I was on this seminar and they wouldn't allow us to have a transcript. So what I did is I launched the audio recording app on my phone, on my Mac, recorded the message. I then took the recording, dumped the entire recording into Notes, and Notes created a transcript for me. So um, I was afraid it was going to stall out because it was a large audio file, but nope, it translated it all. So no problem. Terminal, which most of you don't use, you can customize it in all kinds of different ways, and you can have the color is just cosmetic. Terminal is basically just text, so the color doesn't mean anything to anyone, but I do like the fact that you can now customize it. There is a new application built into the operating system called Recovery Assistant. And if you crash, your Mac will automatically launch Recovery Assistant and guide you through recovering from the crash. And among other things, that you have an option at that point of also telling Apple about your crash so that they can look to see if it was their fault or if it's something else. Um, but it's in the past, particularly on the new Apple Silicon machines, trying to figure out how to recover was uh, different because it was the first time it had changed the way they did that in 20 years, and a lot of people couldn't figure it out. So now it's just built into the operating system. In the past, you've been able to set your phone and iPad so that if you came near a hotspot that you'd used before, it would just automatically rejoin it. What I usually do is I say ask to rejoin it because I don't want to automatically rejoin it. And they've now added this so that your laptops can also ask to rejoin a hotspot, which is useful if you go into your favorite coffee shop and you open up your laptop and you launch Safari and Safari is not working because it's not connected to anything. Well, now you can overcome that problem. You can now block contacts, and not only can you block contacts, but it gives you a centralized list of blocked contacts. And that works with the phone, with messages, and with FaceTime. I get because my phone number is a 240 area code, which is the DC, Maryland, Northern Virginia area. I would show you, but in the last 10 days, I've had 350 calls from that area. My phone has rang twice because right now I'm screening all of those things using something I haven't shown you yet. And it just automatically gets rid of those because I don't know those people and I don't have to listen to them. iOS. It's sort of on all these phones, but a lot of the features, more advanced features, only work on 15, 16s, and 17s. So anything from earlier than 15, a lot of the stuff doesn't work. And that's because they just don't have the horsepower. A lot of the Apple Intelligence something. Here you see the old way of doing filters and the new way of doing filters, different ways you can set things up. So it depends upon what it is you're talking to that can do things. Um, you, um, uh, do I really want to explain this? This is basically you're seeing on one side the old way and the new way, and you can have it as they tried to cluster things so you have more information with less. Um, um, not using them up as much space. On the left here, you're trying to do something and you want to use you want to copy this or delete something. In the past, you actually had to push a button. Now the button appears up in front. It just pops up and says, okay, you've got something selected. Now, what do you want to do with it? Do you want to delete it or you want to copy it or whatever? It just pops up. So it's not using up as much real estate on your screen. You can make bigger fonts on the front of your phone. You can put the menus that used to be at the top, you can now move them down to the bottom if you want to. Uh, you can customize folders in the Files application on the phone, just like you can now do on the Mac as well. I don't know of how many of you have ever used Files on the iPad or iPhone, but it's basically a filing system. And you can now set up folders and customize them to your heart's content. This is a way of setting if you have a particular type of file, what opens it. In the past, you were stuck with whatever the default was on the phone or on the iPad. Now you can choose a different uh, application to open up a particular type of file. Um, Mostly these are going to be things for programming or text editing. For most things, it won't make that much different. But they've also added Preview, which is on the Mac now. They've added that to the iPhone and iPad, so you could ask it to open up an image, for example, in Preview that you could then edit. And you can also change the look of the iPad. So among other things, you can come up with this orange theme that is much easier. If you're using it with an orange theme at night, for example, it doesn't wreck your night vision as badly as white light. There is a new phone app that is on the iPhone, the iMac, and the iPad. And I've become a real fan of this. It allows you, assuming that you have an iPhone and it's linked to your Mac, you can make a phone call from your Mac. You can make a phone call from your iPad. You can respond to a phone call. You can also you can look at your voicemail and listen to your voicemail, pretty much anything you want to do. This is what the phone app looks like on the Mac. So if you have an image, if you have a photograph of the person that you're talking to, when they call you, it'll show up. Or if you want to have it in your contacts or whatever, it'll show up and it lists the recent calls that you've had along with the time. And the icon tells you whether that was a FaceTime call or a regular phone call. And it shows you up here in the right-hand corner how this is on an iPad, shows you in the right-hand corner talking using the phone app on an iPad. So as you're talking, it gives you a little wave symbol there showing that audio is going back and forth, and you've got a keypad for dialing, and you can mute yourself and you can hang up. So you have a very, very good control. You can also set it up so it'll record and transcribe. Now, keep in mind that this may have legal implications depending upon what state you're in, but you can record and transcribe your phone call using just your iPad or Mac or phone. And it gives you because it's keeping track of your phone calls, you now have a choice of looking at all your calls, your missed calls, and your voicemail, and you can choose to either have it the old way, which is on the left, or the new way, where you're basically having a unified box and you can then pick out what you want. Um, if I look at mine right now, my missed calls are all red because they're almost all from the 240, 301, 703 area codes of the DC area. Call screening is my favorite feature. I even stuck an article about this on the Strait Mac website on the call screening. Call screening, if you turn on call screening, if they're not in your contacts um, app, if you have no entry in your contacts and you get a call from a number, it will ask them to identify themselves and the reason for the call. And if they don't do that, it doesn't even ring your phone. Now, why is this a good idea? Robots can't answer those questions. So most of 99.9% of all the spam calls out here are from robots. And the robot, when it hears the phone pickup, it just goes into its spiel and it cannot answer who they are and what they want. And so you never hear that call. Some things that you should note is that it does prompt them. There's a voice that comes on and says, in my case, I went over to a friend's house because I didn't know what it sounded like. And it's this nice woman's voice that says, please state your name and reason for calling. And so that way, if it's your doctor's office or somebody, they can do that. And if it's a robot, they won't. And I've had several hundred calls just in the past couple weeks that it didn't even ring. This also works for messages. So if you get messages from unknown numbers, messages through the message app, messages from unknown numbers, it can do the same thing. It'll just screen them out. I will caution you, though, that I wouldn't do this for messages because if your doctor's office or Walgreens or something texts you something, you probably don't know what service they're using. And you probably want to know that your appointment's been pushed back an hour or your medication is ready for pickup or something like that. So I wouldn't do this for messages, but I definitely did do this for phone calls. It also has a hold assist, which I haven't played with, but basically it says that if you're on hold, you can use the hold assist and then you can go off and do whatever you want. And when the hold, uh, when it goes off hold again, it rings you back to say, hey, pay attention to your phone. I I don't know that I trust this because a lot of people that put you on hold, they're not very patient about waiting for you to get back on the phone. So I don't know if I would trust the people on the other end. The technology might work fine, but I don't know about the people. Um, Hold assist detection, you can turn that on and off. The screen unknown callers, you can have it at never, which means everything goes through. You can have its reason for calling, which is what I do, or you can just say silence. If they're not calling from a known number, you won't hear your phone ring. I don't recommend that last one because, again, you might think that your doctor's office is calling from this number, but the switchboard, when they're calling you to tell you that your appointment's an hour late, might be calling from a different number. And at that point, you just never get the message. Call filtering, you can have a choice of unknown callers, which is a good thing for you to do that. So that'll force them to go to bowl of voicemail. But again, if it may not be somebody you know, so I don't turn that one on. But the spam one is a little bit different. There's a nationwide database kept by all the phone companies of phone numbers that call with spam. And everybody contributes to that. So if you just turn that on, Apple will say to the phone company, hey, use that list. And if it's from a phone number that's generating spam, you just won't hear it. So that thing's a safe thing to do. They have new ringtones. The little bird has little hands on it. I don't use it, but a lot of other people really like the little bird ringtone. I have custom ringtones, and it used to be that you needed to have an app to create custom ringtones. Now it's built into the operating system. If you have the right kind of file, you can trim it down and turn it into a ringtone. It says that there's a 30-second limit. I will tell you from experience that if your ringtone is longer than a couple seconds, it'll drive you nuts. I had Sarah McLaughlin's Building a Mystery. it was just that phrase, building a mystery. But the way she sings that, it takes several seconds. I got really tired of listening to that, so I trimmed it down quite a bit. But it's now built in, so you don't need a separate app for doing this. Messages, you can now have custom backgrounds. I don't know why you care. You can have polls. I don't know that I'll ever use it. You can set up groups and type something and send something to a group all at once. You can have details and summaries of conversations. This is an example of messages with a custom background for that particular group. And again, not something I care about, but other people might like it. And this is the groups shown on iPad, showing the poll. So you can send it out to a group and everybody can vote on whether they want whatever kind of food. You can select text in messages to copy. I don't know how many of you ever tried to do that, but somebody sends me a long, complicated text message and I want to just quote part of it. That's really annoying that you can't do that. And now you can. So that's cool. You can filter out messages from unknown senders or from promotions or things that are known as spam, and it'll keep track of all that stuff. You can change the priority. So I have it set so that during my quiet time, which is when I'm in bed, it won't tell me if there's a message comes through. Well, you can change that so that for time sensitive things, yes, you would get a message, or for personal things or whatever, you can now specify it'll break through your time sensitive time, so it'll actually tell you what's going on. FaceTime, again, has a lot of the same features now that they've added to phones and messages, unknown colors, personalized contacts, and all kinds of other things, making FaceTime basically more of a video phone than it even was before. But by bringing this to the Mac and iPad, it also adds some flexibility. Podcasts, I don't listen to podcasts, but they have several new features on podcasts, including things that were requested by the blind. Um, Blind users are huge users of podcasts, but what they can't stand is listening to it at normal speed. Most blind people have trained themselves to do speed listening, and this allows you to speed up the settings by up to a factor of 3 so that they can listen to hour-long podcast in 20 minutes. But again, I don't listen to podcasts, so I haven't paid that much attention to it. Accessibility. There is now a magnifier on the Mac, and there's a magnifier on the phone, so you can use your phone to magnify coins and anything that was too small. I use it for looking at directions and all kinds of stuff. They've now added it to the Mac, and I tried it out earlier today, and I was a little bit surprised. I have these little watch batteries sitting on my desk. They're for air tags, and I can't read the model number on the back because it's just etched in really small. But I held it up to my mirror, I held it up to my camera, and the magnifier had no trouble at all reading it. You can teach it your name so that Siri knows your name and your phone will know your name and how to pronounce it, so that when, among other things, if you have things like various and sundry prompts, it'll know that somebody is calling for you rather than some random assembly of letters. They made changes to the accessibility reader. One thing that I'm not terribly fond of is their accessibility nutrition labels, which I'll show you. It has nothing to do with nutrition, and I object to the terminology, but these are all designed to make the machine more widely usable. And if you don't think you need accessibility, you should worry about accessibility options. Everybody on this planet at one time or another had accessibility problems, either when you were an infant or when you start losing your eyesight and hearing and taste buds and other things. All of us will have at one point accessibility issues, and that's what they're trying to do is make the Mac and the iPhone and the iPad more easily accessible to everybody. The nutrition labels have nothing to do with nutrition, but they're patterned after the nutrition labels on foods. And basically, it's so when you go onto the App Store, as an example, and somebody says that they have this new app and what does it do? Well, they tell you that it does all these wonderful things. Well, does it allow voiceover? Does it have a dark interface? Does it show sufficient contrast? Does it allow for voice control? Can you differentiate things without color? All of these are things that are accessibility issues depending upon the person. I know this one person who, I can't remember what's that, Legend of Zelda, a game that's very popular on the Nintendo Switch. They had trouble playing the game because at some points you have to be able to differentiate the bad guys from red uniforms from the bad guys with brown uniforms. And my friend couldn't do that. Red and brown look the same to them. And this is saying that before they download this program, it'll tell them, yes, you can differentiate colors without seeing the color. So that's what the nutrition label is. It has nothing to do with nutrition. It's just telling you about an app before you download it. And they've already had this for things like privacy and security, but now they've added it for other things as well. Name recognition, I mentioned this. You can teach your phone to recognize your name. Um, on the live listening that they have, if you have a watch, it'll now show up on your watch as well. So you could be listening to something and you can see the transcript on your watch in case you don't have your phone, or if it's just easier to look at your phone, your watch. I know a lot of people that carry around the phone in the pocket and they interact with their phone entirely through the watch. Um, Apple Sports widget. This is something that I don't know that I like that much. I turned it on, not realizing what it was, and it told me the final score for a game that I'd been planning on watching, which was not quite what I had in mind. But it's designed so you can get a real quick look at teams that you're following. It's just I didn't want to know the final score. I wanted to watch the game, and I turned on my phone and it told me already. So that was disappointing. But if you're into that sort of thing, they have that. The live translation will now work with Apple Music on the phone. So if the song that you're listening to is in Spanish, it'll give you a transcript. You One of the things that you should not drive a car with um, AirPods in your ears because they can mask off your traffic noise. But I had my niece was she was she was in the back seat listening to something with her AirPods on, and she got a phone call. And the next thing I know, it's blasting out over the car radio, which startled all of us. This new setting allows you to make sure that if you have some kind of incoming audio, you can have a setting to make sure that it stays with your AirPods or headphones or whatever you want. So I didn't understand why this existed, but I found out fairly quickly. And I lost my mouse again. Reminders, you can now have suggested reminders for a particular type of day. Um, Alarms are just alarms, but reminders are a little bit, you can um, reminders are getting a lot closer to being the kind of support you want for that it had for alarms. I know that reminders when I was in England, the reminder was kept on tried to tell me like um, oh, what was it? Midnight that I should take out the trash in Colombia, and I in Swim, and I really didn't want that reminder. But now they support time zones so that if you're in England, it knows to make an adjustment. I still wouldn't have taken out the trash when I was in England, but details. You can now have reminders auto categorize. There's a button specifically for that. I'm not quite sure if the spelling about that because that looks like a British spelling rather than an English spelling, but such is life. The clock now, this doesn't look that much different from the old and the new in terms of that, except for now you have to push that little checkbox to say that you've set an alarm. But the next one is really quite cool. The old iPhone snooze bar, you had to find it and it was small. The new one's much, much larger. And it's for the iPhone and the iPad, and then that definitely has come in handy because I have hit my snooze button many, many times, and it's much easier to hit. It will do adaptive battery support for these types of phones and a similar selection of iPads. And with the adaptive power, it just knows what's really critical for a function and what can kind of be ignored. So it'll stretch your battery life a little longer. And it tells you when it's using adaptive power. And it shows it on the lock screen as well. If you need something to be charged, it'll pop up and tell you that it needs to be charged. And there's this new battery app on the phone tells you not only the current battery life, but it tells you your usage over a period of time, which is kind of cool. You can now spell things with your voice, for example, if you say Steven and it tries to spell it with a V and you want it spelled with a PH, you can teach it that that's the proper way to spell it. Um, the new phones have eSIMs, and an eSIM means there's not a physical SIM that you pop out and pop back in again. You can now set it up so that there's eSIM transfer protection. So if someone steals your phone, they can't reuse it because they can't reprogram the SIM because it requires either Face ID or Touch ID, and even the passcode won't uh, help them with that. Um, this isn't so much because you're in any great immediate danger of having your phone stolen, but it reduces the attractiveness of stealing your phone by having this eSIM protection. And they've done all kinds of things with photos now. You can pin collections and lots of intelligence there with um, um, how to lay things out, and it'll do things by date. It'll also do it by events. This is not the one. I wanted to show you this. It'll do event recognition. So if you're going to a concert and it knows that you're in a particular place because of the location tracking and you're taking a lot of pictures, okay, you're taking pictures of a Mariners game and it'll put them all together into a Mariners event. The camera now on the left, you see how the camera controls are on current phones. On the right, you see it is the new one. On the left one, the iOS 18, quite often I'd be taking the phone out to take a photograph, and then I realize that it's actually in video mode. And right now, instead of just sliding back and forth willy-nilly, you have to explicitly press video or explicitly press photo. And if you're looking at photo, only the photo options show up instead of all the possible options. So this is a very good usability upgrade. And when you are looking in photos, it'll show you other things that apply only to photos, which is nice. It now has a lens cleaning correction. You can set this so it'll remind you. It thinks the lens is dirty because I carry mine around in my pocket. If it gets dust or lint or something on it, it'll notice that it can't focus right because there's stuff on the lens, and so it'll nag you. I don't exactly know what it does to nag you because this hasn't come up, but you can now have lens cleaning hints. And um, this is something that you basically can set it up to take pictures, um, set it up so you can take a photograph and then it'll just automatically take a photo. And the different ways to do that now, you can use AirPods, you can actually tell Siri to take a photograph. There are all kinds of different ways you can do it so that you don't actually have to press the button. You can use a timer, different kinds of ways to take photographs now. And Safari has a new tab design on the iPhone. It can be at the bottom, they can be at the top for the tabs, and one on the left is the has it at the bottom, and the one as the one on the right has it at the top. And where you have the part where you type in the address, you can move it from the bottom to the top depending upon your um, what you want and how to they no longer have web apps because that was a misuse of an existing terminology. They now call them web clips. They're basically the same thing. So if you want to save something as a bookmark on your phone that you click on that and it will automatically go to a website, you do that. They just called it a different thing. Validation codes. Somebody says that we're going to send a validation code to your phone. You say, sure. Now, if you stay on that site with Safari, quite often the validation code will just pop into that box. So you don't have to go into Mail and grab it and then copy it in or into Messages and grab it. It'll just pop in all of its own accord. And Journal, which probably few of you use, which is a nice journaling app. It's now available for the Mac and iPad as well as for the iPhone, and they sync to one another via iCloud. They have new background sounds. They've had old background sounds before, but they've added new ones. Exactly why you want to hear babble, I don't know, but that's one of the choices. Um, And if you have a phone with multiple SIMs, you can say which one is your primary and which is your secondary. And there, it literally acts as if you're using two different phones. So you can also um, make a phone call from the secondary instead of the primary. And it's fairly transparent. Um, I haven't tried this yet, but visited places will keep track of where you've been, so you can actually share a map of places that you've been. I haven't played with this. I'm curious about that. Preferred routes, if you routinely go a particular way, after a while, maps will figure out that you go that way, and that's the way it'll suggest how to get someplace. And it'll give you weather alerts for significant events for particular locations. You can add a digital ID to your wallet if you're in Maryland, but you can't do that in Washington State. It works in 11 states. And you can add your US passport to your wallet, but it only works for TSA checkpoints and it can't be used for international travel. You can add verify codes for various things into Apple Wallet now. You can add boarding passes, and it even will show things like airport maps in Apple Wallet, which if I was near an airport that was big enough to merit that attention, I suppose that'd be cool. You can have Amazon return codes in Apple Wallet, so you don't have to carry it around. Or if you lose the piece of paper, you still have the access to it. Order tracking, again, um, in Apple Wallet. You can store all kinds of different cards other than credit cards in there in Apple Wallet. And I'm just going to go through the the CarPlay, because even if you have CarPlay, this will depend upon your car as to whether or not you can actually see these. But it's got a much more horizontal layout now, and you can add things that I would never dream of putting up on my car dashboard, but if you really wanted to, you could. Um, there are some things with Apple Home that have changed as well, but I'm not going to go into that. because I went to get onto iPad. iPad has, and I'm going to skip through most of this, iPad now allows you to have multiple windows. Here you see multiple windows. And down here in the lower right corner of these screens, you'll see a little um, partial circle. That's the control for resizing the windows. But you can have overlapping windows, which makes it much easier to cut, copy, paste things out of multiple apps. This particular app in the foreground here, that's Preview, which is now on the iPad and the iPhone, and it allows you to do things like crop stuff. Um, this is a huge update for the iPad if you have a compatible iPad because it makes it much, much, much more like a laptop. Just really very impressed with that. And it shows you the difference in navigation in terms of the things that it has. One of the things that is not obvious, there's close buttons, minimize buttons, expand buttons that you didn't have before. And there's also a top menu items that you didn't have before. Um, Different gestures you can move for moving things around. Um, Oops, let me go back over there. What she did is she double tapped on the menu bar. And yes, it now has a menu bar depending upon the app. And you can use different gestures. If she throws it up against a window edge, it'll stick to that edge, or unless she throws it down, in which case it makes it disappear. But you see the menu bars at the top, it looks much more like a Mac now. Anyway, I've talked for a long time, so I'm going to stop right this second. If I can ever find out where my arrow keys are. Any questions?
Yes, Lawrence.
Yes.
As you're going through the things in the photographs, I noticed the live function on photographs, and I've always wondered what is that?
Oh, live function. I turn it off. What the live function does is a lot of people, when they're taking pictures of pets or children or something like that, they'll take a picture, and what they discover later on is that what they really wanted to do was a half second before or after the photograph that they got. So the live function is it takes a short movie, and the movies are like half a second long, but they're I don't know how long they are, but anyway, it's basically as a movie. I don't like it because I usually take them by accident, and then I have these large movies instead of the photograph that I
Yeah,
wanted.
yeah,
So I've just always turned it off.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's going to be a larger file if you're doing anything with it.
yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But keep in mind that a digital video is really just a whole bunch of still pictures with
Yeah. Of course.
sound.
That's
And
what anybody could do.
that's what the live function is. It's a short video and it has sound.
Is
Oh,
there a
okay.
way to shut it off so that it stays off?
Yes. Go into your iPhone into settings for the camera and just turn it off.
Yeah, I've tried that and it didn't work, but I have an older iPhone 13. So, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get a new one.
Um, I will I share your heartburn though. I
I have
know
it's not a question, it's a statement. I want to thank you for reminding me when I use Safari to go in and then remove all the history. Every time I shut down Safari, I clear it. And
with
that's helped with emails.
with the ATMP or whatever that acronym is, with the new data protection, you don't really have to do that because it's not keeping that stuff anyway. The cache that it keeps on the computer is not really an issue. And when you get rid of the history, it's the cache on the computer that you're getting rid of. What you want to do is keep Google from keeping track of that. And the only way to do that is to use their advanced data protection. Getting rid of the history on your Mac or on your phone doesn't really help you at all, because your phone and your Mac and your iPad uses those little snippets to rebuild a page faster. If you go into Olympic Medical, rather than if you go into the online patient portal, you don't really need it to download all of that stuff that never changes, like the Olympic medical system and all that sort of stuff. That always stays the same. So there's no reason to get rid of that stuff. And when you get rid of history, that's what you're getting rid of. You're getting rid of things that actually help your browser speed up. What that advanced data protection does, it never sends that information to Google. It never sends that information to Amazon. It never sends that information to anybody, because it makes it anonymous and it makes it look like it's come from all kinds of people. So it's not useful to them anymore.
But it seems like if I visited a bunch of sites, that I'll start getting ads.
Yes, but again, if you use that advanced data protection that's in the new version of Safari, assuming that you have something that
Okay.
supports it, it'll stop that.
Okay. Thank you. You more than answered my question.
I will tell you that sometimes getting rid of the history is a good idea if you notice the browser is getting very sluggish. As an example, at one point, this was years ago at work, couldn't understand. We used Google Chrome a lot, and I couldn't understand why Google Chrome was just so pathetically, ridiculously slow. I emptied out the cache and I freed up half a gigabyte of space. Google Chrome just was a pack rat and kept all kinds of stuff. And by getting rid of it, Google Chrome no longer had to sort through all of that stuff, and that actually made the thing faster.
Oh, cool. Good. Okay. I'm always learn something. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question for you, Lawrence. I took a trip the other day and I used my QR scanner to do to get a boarding pass, and then I lost it. Where does the queue, when you scan something like a menu in a restaurant, where does it go?
It doesn't go anywhere. It's displayed on your screen, and if you close that screen, it goes away.
Okay, that's why I could never find it. I thought it went in documents, or I was looking all
No.
over for it.
No, even if it's something like a PDF, if it displays it on the screen, that still doesn't save it anywhere. You still need to save it someplace.
Yeah, and you can't save it. You can't save that.
It depends upon what it is, and it depends upon a lot of different things. Like there are lots of things that people have you scan a QR code on your phone, and you think, well, that's stupid because I can't do anything with it. As an example, I was out taking pictures of the No Kings protest on
Oh, yeah.
Saturday, and somebody had a QR code on their protest sign. We were so far from a cell tower. What good did it do? And there are times for a QR code, and there are times when they don't do anything useful.
Okay, so you have to see it when you scan it, and then that's all gone. You move on.
Well, if you can save it, like if it's something that, like if it's a PDF boarding pass, you should be able to save that into the file system on your phone. But then you have to know how the files work so you can find it again.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people. This this is not to tell tales on my neighbors, but I had a neighbor who keeps on saving things on her computer and she can never find them. She did not know that her Windows machine has a downloads folder. And so I opened up the downloads folder and it had like 22,000 things in it, none of which she'd ever seen. So being able to download is only half the battle. You also have to know how to get into downloads.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Lawrence, what the new phone 17 has three different options for capacity,
Yes.
which for the average user that doesn't take the amount of pictures you take, would you
Well,
suggest?
I think uh, it depends upon a lot of things that you do, like how many apps you have, and that's really kind of hard thing to do. Um, my I have a friend that she likes to play this three-dimensional chess game that I looked and the size of the file on her phone is 1.2 gigabytes. Well, that's a lot of space for a chess program. And but she says, well, I don't take lots of photographs, so why am I running out of space? Well, it's because she has these large apps on her phone. And there are other people who keep things on their phone, like every single email message they've ever had. I will tell you one thing that's kind of they talk about CO2 being the silent killer. The silent killer on iPhones are messages. If people send you attachments and messages, unless you delete those attachments, they're still on your phone. And I'm not going to mention who it was, but I recently found somebody who had 37 gigabytes worth of messages. Now, the messages themselves, they were in the thousands, but the attachments, pictures of grandchildren, income tax returns, who knows what, just they were all there and they never deleted them. So it depends upon a lot about what you do. But I would say in this day and age, and also keeping in mind that you probably want to have the phone for more than a year or two, I would probably not, I would probably aim for something like 256 gigs. That may seem like a lot to a lot of people, but believe it or not, it allows you to go out and take pictures. It allows you to not clean up your messages and email all the time. It's a nice medium.
Okay, thanks. Also, you were deciding a few months ago about passwords and using that instead of one password. Did you make the switch?
No, I haven't because I've been using one password for 20 years. And I decided I didn't want to spend several days going through and pruning the stuff I no longer using. So I use them both. And basically, if I try to do something and it's not in Apple passwords, I go back to one password and go spelunking around to go find it. So I'm using both. But for all practical purposes, since they've put it on the Mac, I'm for all the new stuff, I'm using passwords, especially with the new features that they put with macOS 26, like the security features in terms of telling you things that have been compromised, telling you, nagging you because you haven't changed a password, nagging you because you used a reused password. There are lots of things that it does just to gently put you back on the path of righteousness.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Julie, did you have a question?
Yeah, is there somebody that you would recommend, a person or a company locally that would come to your house and actually upgrade your operating system? I mean, I used to be able to do it from 1989 on, but it's just become more cumbersome and I just would prefer to have somebody else do it. And I need to update my Mac Mini, which is great. I need to get a new iPad because mine is old. And of course, I need a new iPhone too. So I want to just upgrade everything and have somebody that knows how to do it and just pay them to do it. There's somebody you would recommend.
The answer is no. I I will first tell you why several people have asked, why don't I become a consultant? I will tell you why. Um, I recently I had need of a lawyer after my spouse passed. I wanted to talk to a lawyer. I found this lawyer. Actually, this lawyer was recommended. I went into their office. I noticed they had a really old version of Windows. I told them they really needed to upgrade it because they were in danger of, having problems, and they blew me off. And then I got a call from them a few weeks later. Their machine had been locked up by ransomware. So this also illustrates why I don't want to become a consultant. If you're a consultant, people expect success. This guy with his old machine locked up by ransomware, there's no way I could meet a standard for success. So all I do is torque off this lawyer. And I decided 20 years ago that I didn't want to do that. So I never went into consulting. When it comes to recommending a consultant, I would like to recommend someone that I actually have a great deal of confidence in. And I don't, there's just no one around here that I can recommend that. I know a lot of people that are self-educated and they say, I've been using Macs for 20 years and I've been using it for 20 years since it first came out. Well,
I have, but I don't want to do it. Yeah.
Well, no, here's the problem. This person who's been using them for 20 years since they first came out, Macs came out 40 years ago. So right there, he kind of disqualified himself.
Yeah, 1989 is when I got my first one, but
Well, that's actually pretty far back there. So there's no one I'm really willing to recommend. If the guy who ran Mac Traders is still around, and I don't know if he is, I've talked to him and he's actually quite good.
Okay, I appreciate that because that would be the guy that I would go to, and I was just wondering if you'd,
Well, when I first moved to I'm from this area. I graduated from Central Kitsap High School over in Kitsap County, but I was in purgatory for 40 years. When I moved back here, I saw Mac Traders was in business, and I went in and talked to him, wasted his time for about half an hour before he decided that he probably wasn't going to be able to do anything for me. But in the process, I learned that he actually did know what he was talking about.
yeah,
So
he's a good guy.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's somebody I can recommend.
Okay, I
But
appreciate that because he would be my number one guy, and he's done it for me in the past. So.
and if his website's still up, you'll be able to find his number.
I think he's in on my message. I get his message.
But
Yeah,
most of the people that I see that say they're Mac consultants or Windows consultants, I could not recommend.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Okay. Goodbye.
Bye. Well, before we go, what do you want to do next month?
Okay.
And you probably don't have that answer to that, so send me messages with suggestions.
Lawrence, thank you so much for this.
I
mean,
realized that was an awful lot today.
Right. Well, we'll probably have more questions now that
Next
we're
month.
all updating, next month about 26. So maybe
I'll have it by then too.
I will tell you that if you have poor bandwidth at home and you have a lot of devices that need to be updated or possibly new ones that need to be purchased, it might be worth it to go to make an appointment with a Genius Bar at Alderwood Mall or Tacoma Mall. Tacoma Mall if you don't like taking a ferry, Alderwood Mall if you don't mind. Because they have excellent bandwidth. If you take your stuff with you and you buy something at the same time, usually they're more than happy to update your stuff. The bandwidth is the important part because yes, you can do it at home, but if you've got like our church used to get 70K bandwidth. At 70K, it would take you 8 years to update your iPhone.
Oh, no.
So, if you don't have good bandwidth, it might be worthwhile going someplace that has decent bandwidth. But make an appointment because they're always busy.
Yeah.
And if you want to see a tree inside, go to the Apple store at University Village. They got a full-grown tree inside of their store.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway.
Thank you.
Night.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.